Okay, so in this part number 4, I'm going to focus a little bit on several ways that we can use to give a little bit more depth to this texture. This will be used for the tunnel on the walls, basically, of the tunnel. But if we apply that with the tunnel plugin or the tunnel filter right there, animated tunnel, as we remember, it's a little bit flat. You know, it may be rotating, it may be moving forward, whatnot, but it appears a bit flat. And what would be nice is if you could perhaps give a little bit of depth to that. That could be an embossing, or it could be a light source shading that casts some shadows. So a couple of different tricks we can play to make it look a little bit more 3D-ish, you know, a little bit more realistic looking, not so flat. So let's go do this. Let's go undo. Actually, let me go load the original image. I'm going to need that, and let me use this one here. That's the one I had started this series with very early on, and get rid of the animation and store the image. Actually, let's resize it down to 512 by 512, because there it is, resample 512 by 512, because we will use that for the tunnel, and the tunnel filter right now works best at the resolution 512 squared. Alright, so let's go and store this image so we can easily get back to it. Let's turn it into a grayscale. That's certainly something we'll want to use, since it's going to be essentially the elevation map or displacement. We don't need the actual colors that were there. And let's store that one as the working copy safe snapshot if you want. Alright, so how can we turn this into a little bit more 3D look? One of them, one of the filters or one of the tools is in the convolution collection, a convolve. There is a embossing mechanism, or a color emboss, and that itself is a really cheap one. Quick trick to give it a little bit of depth. Right, it looks like it's being illuminated from the upper left, and there are some dark shadows to the lower right. So that gives it a little bit of depth, and sometimes that's all we need to give it a better appearance. If we store this image and then go to create an animation from that, let's say 88 frames, and we turn this through the filter into the animated tunnel. Let's go perhaps just moving it but not rotating. There you go. We will see a little bit more of a depth perception now, right? It has a little bit more depth to it. And let me show it at original size. There you go. Alright, so that's one technique. It's using the displacement map. Now, there are a couple of other ways to get something similar to that, and this one here is the stylize filter. So the stylize filter has a tool called the lighting tool. Let me move this thing here to the side first with the control shift and drag it around, or this little handy hand. Let's go to filter. Where was it? Stylize lighting tool. Okay, so we'll be lighting it, not lightning, but we'll be applying a light source, and that light source can be far away and we can bring it down to the surface, or it can be very bright light source and we don't have to be that close, so it reaches a little bit farther away. And as you move the light source around, you can tell that the image that we are shining it on is being interpreted as a elevation map. And we can in fact change how much displacement we have, how high it is, the texture height, so to speak, and that will add a little bit of depth, you know, realism. You can reduce the smoothness so that it looks a bit more like it's revealing only the main features, or you can multiply with the original so that it's still showing some of the colors. Now it wasn't colored anymore. In this case, it was black and white or grayscale. But you see some of the darker areas here in this preview, and those start showing up here as well when you multiply. If you don't, it's going to reveal rather just the sort of the highlights of the changes in the image. It's essentially a high-pass filter that's showing where there are differences from one pixel to the next, showing differences and changes. So we can definitely use that to give it a bit of both, right? Both the plastic or the not the plastic, the 3D look to it, and then also some of the original shading. So that's one way to do that. We can perhaps adjust the color a little bit, or the brightness rather. Actually, the color too. You see the light color here, and maybe you like it more of an orangey, orange color, and you can move it one way or another. And you can in fact add another light source. Add a light right here, and say this one is going to be more kind of a bluish, something like this. And let's move it here now. Here in this preview it's very dark because it's showing only the effect from this light source, and so we need to bring it down or bring the intensity up, or both. And in here in this preview it's showing you kind of letting you focus on just what this light source does. And then over here on the right side you see the combination of both together, and that's actually done through layers. So over here, let me exit out of that here. Over here you can see, if you take a look at the layers, there are now two layers, and there are the base layer, the first one with the orange light source, and the second one is an additive mode. So when you select that, you'll see it additive here, and you can adjust how much of that you want to actually blend to that. And it doesn't have to stay additive. You could make that a hard light, or you could do a soft light. So a lot of different ways to get very different effects from that combination of lights there. But anyway, so this is something that you can use to create that 3D perception. Let's go back to the additive mode, and at some point you may want to flatten it into a single merge with next layer, so the whole thing gets flattened. And so this one we could take into the tunnel just the same way. Now it's not symmetrical anymore, it's not seamless, so we might want to turn this into a seamless. Let's go to, oh, you know what, let's try without first. Let's go to store this, just in case we want to go back to it as is, and simply run it through the tunnel again. So filter, where was it, animated tunnel, taking that current image. This time we'll let it rotate a little bit and move slowly, and there you go. Oh wait, no, I don't know. Yep, that's the one. That's it. Okay, took the current image. So you see there is some depth to that too now. It's not necessarily all consistent, and on top of it, because it was not seamless, you see a definite cut on one of the seams to the other side. So that would be something that we can adjust by or address by going into the image and make it seamless. And we don't need to apply that to the entire animation, because we are about to take this seamless image now and recreate the animation. Actually, we don't need to recreate the placeholder for the animation. All we need to do really is find the image that we made seamless. Did I just lose that? I guess I did. Alright, let's go back to this and create that seamless image again. And there it is, make seamless. And perhaps even more overlap on the edges, left to right side. And then take this image. Okay, let's this time let's take a snapshot, a save copy. There you go. And but now that we have it, we can go and turn the filter animated once again. And trust me, that's not the last time we'll do it. Tunnel. This time we'll go slow rotation and a little bit faster on the movement. And there you go. All right. So now we have a nice little tunnel with a little bit of depth perception. Alright, so that looks so much better. Let me store this one. We can perhaps go back to the original and then do a comparison. So I'm going to store this one to disk, and that should be done by now. There it is. So I'm going to store this one here, and then I'm going to go back to the original image. That was this one here. And you know, maybe we could make this one seamless too, so we really are kind of comparing very similar images. Where was it? Over here, image, make seamless. And I forget how much seamless overlap I gave it, but let's give it about 20/20. And there you go. Nope. Store this one, image, and store image. And you see where I'm going with this. I'm trying to repeat myself here. You see where I'm going with this. I'm trying to repeat myself here. Okay. It's because, you know, when you repeat things, you just learn it, and you end up doing this mechanically. So much easier to really develop this skill eventually. So one thing I'll do now is to use that not the brush, the filter, animated, and where was it? Tunnel. There it is, and get ourselves a little bit of movement and rotation. And so soon enough we have this one. Okay, so here's the flat looking surface, the original, and let's go store that one. Right, store that one to disk. And here's the better one that, well, better is always up for discussion, but it's the one that has a bit more of the 3D look to it, right? So that's one example, yet another example of how to create a texture. Let's, I mean, like a 3D embossed look, or 3D, give it some more depth. And let's see other ways. Let's say we want to, okay, first of all, let's go free this animation. All right, and so here's yet another way. This image can be taken into the 3D designer. Let's go to transform and 3D designer. All right. And so the 3D designer is a tool that can do displacements. You can see that right here. It does allow you to go up to a certain level of detail, though it's not extremely high resolution. But when you move things, it switches to a lower resolution just temporarily. And the moment you let go of the mouse, boom, it goes back to the high resolution. Still, you might want to use that to give it the right orientation. Look at it from the top. Let's change the angle. There you go. Change this angle so it's not sideways or at an angle like diagonal. Let's give it not so much on this. No, only very little bit of extrusion. But you see now, even if I flatten it, in fact, it's better to see from the side. Yeah, so here it is. I don't use this extrusion. I kind of keep it almost flat, and something like this. And perhaps with the angle still in a nice perspective. But now I can use the light sources to place them anywhere here around it. Perhaps move the altitude of the light source, bring it down close, bring it go up. Perhaps move the zenith so it's kind of closer to the center of the object, or way out on the edge. And as I do so, it's going to cause a illumination effect. A shiny border or edges will show here, depending on how much of a threshold I have on that displacement there. Right? So that's one technique you can also use to give it a bit more of that 3D look. And so then the thing is that eventually you'll need to bring it back down and make sure it's you still look at it from the top, not from the side like this, right? You don't want to look at it from this side. You want to look at it from the top, and at an angle that doesn't show it turned around. Maybe, in fact, you can squeeze it a little bit or scale it up. What else can you do here? We've changed the light source color. Let's say give it a bit of a vermilion color. There you go. And there's two light sources here. There's this one here too. You can give it a bit of a bluish color. That one we may want to move to the other side. So we have a bluish tint on one side and this one here on the other. Change the intensity. Where is it? Light range. There you go. Now I have some glitches on my graphic card here, it seems. I don't know. Maybe it's a bug in 3D Designer. This used to work much cleaner on my system, so it could be a bug with the driver. You know, every once in a while when you get an update, something gets fixed and goes better or faster, and something else breaks. So it's complex enough that you can pretty much expect that. But one thing that you can do also is change the amount of specularity and the hardness of the surface, and then it looks a bit more like a wet surface or a metallic surface or something like that. Anyway, so here are some ways to make it look like it's got a bit of depth to it, right? So now you have metallic surfaces or plastic surfaces with an attitude, so to speak. And let's change the zoom to make it almost flat. There you go. And I think that's good. Let's go OK that and store that, because this is precious. Let's go here to store image copy. And perhaps actually increase the dynamic range to see if we can get some more brightness. Perfect, look at that. Let's go and store that one. And perhaps, if you needed it even brighter or higher contrast, you could go to adjust in the filter menus here and look for value or color to change, or hue. You could change the hue on that, right? If you, for instance, preferred it more of a greenish tint, probably there you go. And there's a bit of magenta or purple showing here still, or you could have the green go to this side. So really fun stuff to play with here, and eventually have it again go seamless, make seamless, and there you go. And so that way that seamless texture can be run through the tunnel just the same way. This time we need to again go to create. This time I'm going to make it a little bit longer. I'm going to go 222 frames, and at 30 frames a second, that's going to last about 7 seconds and then some. So let's go like this. Let's go apply the tunnel, animated tunnel, and so I'm going to move it forward pretty quickly, but also rotate it a little bit. There you go. So it's going to be a mad dash going really fast through that tunnel. Okay, let's go check that out. Look at that. Now there might be something here in the inner part that's a little bit too noisy. High contrast pictures will do that. When you think about it, this is high contrast. There are some very bright parts and some very dark parts. This is very quick changes in brightness. The luminosity here is extremely high, and then next to that it's extremely dark. So that high contrast, look at that, the shaded area on this vertical bar here, this vertical shade, that's very dark. Next to that, a pixel or two away, very bright ones. So that's gonna bring a lot of scintillation or flicker, whatever you want to call it. That's definitely something that you will see, especially around here in the center where they're all crammed together very tight. So what you could do there is darken that. And perhaps I'll finish with that to give you a bit of an idea of how to make this look like it's not continuing forever at the bright level like we see it here. We want this to kind of disappear in the darkness. At the end of the tunnel, like looking down that pipe, we don't want to see it's so bright back there. So what we'll do is make it dark, and here's one technique to do that. I mean, if you have a brush that's already kind of the size of this circle, you could just stamp it down there. But if you don't, here's what I'll do. I'll switch with up here in the upper right corner. I'll switch to the swap image. Right in here we have nothing right now, and if you did have some other image, that's basically the back of your canvas, the painting surface. What you can do is you can erase it, right? To click here or right click here to say erase to white. And then what I'll do is I'll draw sort of a circle in here, maybe a filled oval. Let's get the filled oval here and place it right around here, right? And then I'll go and make that a bit blurry. So let's go to the filter and make it blurry with the Gaussian blur, for instance, one of the best blurry algorithms, something like this. Make sure it's still pretty dark in the center, but goes out nicely in a progressive way to the outside. All right, so this image now we want to multiply to this image so that the darkness will show in here in the middle. Now, they may not be totally exactly lined up, so there's a couple of ways to make this so. But one thing you can do just to get a first look is you scroll here to see the top of the previews, right? If it's closed, you click on the plus sign here, and the previews, you can just click on that preview of the image. The layer mixing will turn on, and you now see that darkness appear. That's the first way to kind of get an idea of what's going to happen if you start doing that. Now right now I'm not actually applying it yet, I'm just sort of previewing it. That's dynamic, and I could go and apply it and then apply it again and again and again, so more until it's the right level of darkness. But I'll probably switch to a different technique to do this, which is, because this is kind of like in honor of the fact that this is a paint program after all. Let's do this through the brush. Let's think outside the canvas and the layer and think through the brush. So let's go and pick it up as a custom brush. You could just take the entire image, so something like this, use selected as brush, and since everything is selected by default, it will take it all. Or you could go with the custom brush pickup tool right there, custom brush selector tool, right? And that way you can pick something that's make it big enough so it picks everything that's not white, like this, right? Kind of like this. Or you could in fact let me see, what could you do here? Maybe turn this into a selection based on the color, right? So you could select with the magic wand. You could select the white area here, and then it selects everything that's the same white pixel, because we have the tolerance on that selection is 0 up here by default. So anything else, the moment it gets to be a non-white pixel, it starts being not selected. And actually there's sort of a transition where that happens. But what we can do is we can select this entire white area, then we can invert the selection right there, and now we have just the inner part. The marching ants are alive on just that part. You can see that here, even if it leaves it a little bit here on the right side, that's a little glitch on my graphics that you might see also. But what I'll do is I'll just show the overlay alpha, and then that way if I zoom in, yeah, the pink is all the way to the edge, and the only part that's selected right now after that inversion is indeed on the inside. So what I'll do is I'll pick that up. I'll pick that up as a custom brush. In fact, if I didn't trust that this was a nice transition on the image or on the selection, I could actually even blur not the image but the selection. You can see that under the selection you can do a box filter alpha or a Gaussian blur alpha, and so now it's doing that. So the transition, the selection itself is being blurred here, right? So that's a nice way to kind of say, okay, I think I got it, but I'm not sure I want to go kind of in that range here, gradually change the selection from fully on to fully off. All right, so now I have a nice selection, and I can pick that up as a custom brush. Use the selected as a brush from the brush menu. Preview it. Click the PRV here so you can preview it. Now this is not perfect because we have sort of a transition to white on the outside. But that's okay. What we'll do is we'll multiply by this rather than paint with this, rather than replace the colors. Multiplying, wherever it's dark, it's going to get darker. Wherever it's white, it's going to leave it alone. So on the edges, it's just not going to have any negative impact. And so let's go store this brush image right here, store and manage copy. If you really like it and you want to use it for future work, I recommend you actually store it in the browse media. Click on browse media and perhaps pin it down, and then find a place, something like my brushes. Oh, I don't have one here, must have lost it. So let's go and create a new category, my brushes, right? And put it right here there and say soft black center. Okay. And then so that way I have my first brush, and it shows here what it looks like when you paint with it. I can just click that now, right? To reuse it, just click it. And the trick now really, let's go close that. The trick is I don't want to paint with that like this. Instead, let's go back to the main image. And what I want to do is paint it, but not in a way that will replace it like that, because that's ugly. What I want to do instead is to multiply it. So I need to change the mode. Look at the context bar, and you'll see the mode up here as default, which is kind of replacing it. And what I really want to do is multiply it. When I multiply, you can click a little bit, or you can just drag around and see how it just adds that darkness now. Now, the thing is, I want to do that not over this one image only. I want to do that over the entire image sequence. So one way to do that is to say, go to animation, go to brush keyframer, and this brush, it will appear right there in the middle. And instead of adding it there or replacing it, by default this is opaque mode that replaces the pixel colors. Instead of doing that, I'll place it here, but I say let's change the mode from opaque to multiply. And now we have this brush making its impact in terms of darkening the center here. And you can even change the scale of it. You can change how quickly it seems to be darkening, or whether the whole thing darkens really quickly there. You can even animate that over the time, because this is a timeline here, and you can definitely change the amount of darkness, or the size of it rather. You can also change the opacity. So if it's going dark too quickly, if you have a brush that's just too dark and it goes dark too quickly there, you can change the size, but then also the opacity, so the impact is a little bit less, and maybe you'll render it several times. Let's do that. So the first time, if I didn't apply it at all, if the opacity were 0, this is what it looks like right now, right? I want something happening here, so let's give it about 100, and let's go render. And then I'll go do that again, and again, and maybe 3-4 times until we have a nice cumulative darkening that we want. Now you do that if you're really subtle. I mean, if you have an eye for it. I couldn't tell the difference. But you know, if you have something that you want to just gradually get to the perfect level, you don't have to try and shoot and miss or something. You can go just gradually. Do it a few times. Click on render and again until you get the right level of darkness there. And you know, if you're in a hurry, then just increase the opacity and be done in 1 or 2 passes. But there it is. That's now a tunnel where we are diving into the darkness and the unknown. Let's go and disable the preview. There you go. Let's go kill this brush. You don't need that anymore. And so here it is. Now in the animated brush keyframer, you remember it had a different aspect ratio, and I kind of liked that aspect ratio. So instead of keeping it as a square, which is this 512 by 512 initial dimension of the texture, one thing I could do here is actually resize it. And if it's not too extreme, for instance, resample it here. I could go and resample it to 640. Right, you know where I'm heading with that, right? 640 by 480. Uncheck the constraint mode here, and 640 by 480, or even 640 by 360. And that might be a bit extreme, but let's try that anyway. And so what that's going to do is it's going to give us a bit more of a flatter, wider tunnel, and there it is. And so what I'll do to finish this is perhaps give it a little bit of a bright, shiny hotspot there. Before that, let's make sure we store a copy of this animation to disk, and that's done. And so now it's time to add a little bit of extra something there. Let's go to the filters in the timeline. I hope I'm not going too fast here. Let's go to the lens flares, and with the lens flares you can see that there is some default lens flare, but it's in the upper left corner. Let's bring it down here in the middle and make sure it's not too bright, and also perhaps change the type. Let's click on flare settings, and I like this one here because that one seems to be having random noises. The position changes, and that makes the streaks change, so the streaks appear to be randomized there. Now they don't seem to be so if you just move it. What you'll want to do is change the position a little bit so that it keeps animating. Alright, so here's how you do. You go to the beginning like this and keyframe that, and then you go to the end and change perhaps the brightness a little bit like so, but also, and more importantly, the position. Okay, and then here in between you give it a few more. Let's say for instance in the middle roughly you go a little bit to the left, keyframe that. Over here halfway between the two keyframes that you see now, those yellow ones, you can go here and change to another keyframe like so, keyframe that. Go here again and set another keyframe once again, and so now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 keyframes, and we can reposition them as needed. We can scrub through that, and you can see that there's a little bit of changing behavior on this light. Now I still actually don't like this light, so let's go to something different. You know, I've just wasted your time here, but it was for fun, it was for good. Let's go and see what we get here. Oh, that's perhaps even better. Alright, let's go apply that, and there you go, almost done. And thanks for watching. We'll do another one. There are a few more ways to do that embossing, or that you know, that adding that 3D surface. I wanted particularly one thing I wanted to do, and I'll do that in the next tutorial, is show you if we walk into this tunnel and we have kind of like lights on the ceiling, a couple of lights along the ceiling. As we walk into this, how to make it look like these lights move from very far away at the end of the tunnel, closer and closer, and you know, get brighter and disappear behind us eventually. We can actually kind of create that type of or simulate that kind of lighting effect as well. So anyway, that's that for right now. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon in the next segment of this tutorial series.